Spring break is supposed to be a time for fun, sunny beaches, endless parties, and memories with friends. But for some, it becomes something else entirely. These aren't just ghost stories. They happened, and they serve as a warning. No matter how carefree you feel, never ignore that gut feeling telling you something is wrong. Because sometimes, it is. Spring break wasn't going as planned. My friends and I had been driving through Florida, heading toward Miami, when we hit a major detour. The highway was shut down due to a massive accident, forcing us onto back roads in the middle of nowhere. By midnight, we were exhausted. We had planned to push through, but when we saw a motel, a little run down, but with a neon vacancy sign glowing through the darkness, we decided to stop for the night. I was the one who walked into the office. The place smelled like damp carpet and cigarette smoke. Behind the counter, an old man sat watching a static-filled TV. He didn't even look up as I approached. "We need a room," I said, placing my credit card on the counter. The man finally glanced up, his eyes strangely dull. "Cash only." I hesitated. That was weird, but we were tired. My friend Jamie handed over a few crumpled bills, and he slid a key across the counter. "Room 7, he muttered. Then as I turned to leave, he added, "Stay inside, no matter what." His words unsettled me, but I didn't ask questions. Something was wrong. The room was what you'd expect: faded floral bedding, a stained carpet, a buzzing ceiling fan. But as we settled in, something felt off. The window wouldn't lock, and worse, the door. It had scratches on the inside, like someone had tried to claw their way out. At around 2 a.m., just as I was drifting off, I heard it. A knock at the door. Not a normal knock, it was slow, deliberate. Knock, knock, knock. Jamie sat up. "Did you hear that?" I nodded. My heart was pounding. Then, from the other side of the door, a voice. "Help me." It was a whisper. Female. Desperate. Jamie moved to open the door, but I grabbed her wrist. Something felt wrong. "Who's there?" I called. Silence. Then, the knock came again. Louder. Knock. 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 I looked at Jamie. "The guy at the front desk. He told us not to open it." She hesitated, then nodded. We stayed still, holding our breath. The knocking stopped. But then, we heard footsteps, moving away. Slowly. Then suddenly, running, fast. Something was out there, and it wasn't just one person. We stayed up the rest of the night, barely breathing. At sunrise, we grabbed our stuff and ran to the car. As we pulled out, I glanced back at the office. The old man was standing at the window watching us, but something about him looked different, like he hadn't moved all night. We didn't stop until we reached Miami, and later, when we checked Google, the motel had been abandoned for years. We thought renting a cabin in the woods for spring break would be fun. Isolated, peaceful. We were wrong. The first night, everything was fine. The 6 of us drank by the fire, played music, and laughed. The only weird thing was a small wooden boat tied to the dock. It looked ancient, almost rotting. "Who owns that?" I asked. Nobody knew. The rental listing hadn't mentioned a boat. That night, I woke up cold. The window was open. And then I heard it, a splash. I sat up, my breath fogging in the air. Outside, the lake was dark and still. But then, something moved. A shadow, just beyond the dock. I squinted. It looked like a man, standing waist deep in the water. He wasn't swimming, he wasn't moving, he was just staring at the cabin. I wanted to wake the others, but I felt paralyzed. Then slowly he lifted his arm and pointed directly at me. My stomach dropped. I shut the blinds, heart pounding. I barely slept. The next morning, I told my friends. They laughed it off. "Probably a drunk fisherman," Jake said. But that night, I heard it again. A splash. I refused to look. By morning, we'd all had enough. We packed up and left early. As we were driving away, I glanced in the rearview mirror. And I swear, standing on the dock was the man from the water. Just watching. We had been at a beach party all night and just needed a ride back to our Airbnb. None of us were sober enough to drive, so we ordered an Uber. A black car pulled up. The driver rolled down the window. For Hannah? That was my name, so we got in. Big mistake. The driver didn't say much. He wore a baseball cap, his hands gripping the wheel too tightly. The ride was supposed to take 15 minutes. But after 20, I noticed something. We weren't going the right way. "Hey," I said, "I think you missed a turn." Silence. Then, I saw his hands. His knuckles were covered in dried blood. My stomach dropped. I met my friend's eyes in the rearview mirror. She knew too. We weren't going home, and we weren't getting out alive. Some spring break trips don't end with a hangover. They end in nightmares. Would you have survived these situations? Let me know in the comments. And remember, always trust your instincts. Because sometimes, the scariest thing isn't a ghost. It's real.